Papa, look over there. 2-year-old Leo Thorne pulled his small hand free from his father's grip. He charged forward with determination. His tiny boots sent splashes of rainwater into the chilly October air. Leo, wait! Kyle's voice was sharp with alarm. But it was already too late. The little boy had already reached the woman huddled on the ground. He tugged on the sleeve of her tattered coat and peered up at her face with wide, innocent eyes. And then he said something that shattered the world. Papa. His voice was filled with a certainty that stopped time. Papa, that is my mama. In that single, impossible moment, Kyle Thorne's entire reality fractured. Every defense he had built over 3 long years of grief came crashing down around him. Every wall, every barrier, every lie he had told himself just to survive, all of it turned to dust. Before we go any further, let me know where you are watching from right now. Drop your location in the comments. This story is about a woman who was ripped away from her family. She was held captive for 3 years. She was forced to believe that everyone she had ever loved had completely forgotten she existed. But even in the darkest moments, she never gave up hope. This is also the story of a man who believed he had lost everything. He buried his heart under layers of anger and sorrow. He built an empire of power and protection, only to learn that the truth had been cruelly twisted by the very people he trusted most. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you depended on, if you have ever felt utterly powerless against people who seemed untouchable, if you have ever been knocked down so hard you thought you would never get back up, this story will show you something important. True strength is not found in seeking revenge. Real power is used to protect the people you love. And sometimes, it takes a child who sees the world without bitterness to recognize a truth that broken adults have long been unable to see. Stay with me until the very end. The message in this story might be exactly what you need to hear today. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because tomorrow, I have a very special story waiting just for you. Now, let us return to that cold, gray afternoon. The October rain had washed all the color from the day. The sky was a flat sheet of steel. The trees had lost most of their leaves. The park benches were wet and empty. It was the kind of day that made you want to stay inside and forget the world existed. Kyle checked his watch. 3:45 in the afternoon. They had just enough time for a quick walk before heading home. It was supposed to be a simple day, a safe day, a normal day. Just a father and his son, taking a walk in the park before dinner. Papa, I am getting cold. Leo's small voice pulled Kyle from his thoughts. I know, little man. Kyle knelt down on the wet path. His large hands gently pulled up the hood on Leo's jacket. The boy's cheeks were bright pink from the sharp wind. Just 5 more minutes, then we are going home for hot chocolate. Leo's eyes lit up like someone had flipped a switch inside him. With marshmallows? Kyle felt a genuine smile form on his face. The first real smile he had managed all day. Yes, with lots and lots of marshmallows. Leo pumped his tiny fist in the air. Yes, I love marshmallows. Kyle reached out and ruffled his son's damp hair. I know you do, buddy. I know you do. Leo was the one person in the entire world who could always draw a smile from Kyle Thorne. Even on the hardest days. Even on the days when the grief felt like it would crush him. Even on the days when he woke up reaching for someone who was no longer there. Leo was his reason to keep going. His reason to get out of bed every morning. His reason to breathe. The park was mostly deserted this afternoon. The rain had driven most people indoors. A few dedicated joggers ran past with their hoods pulled up. A handful of people sat alone on benches, lost in their own thoughts. Kyle's first bodyguard stood about 10 feet behind them. He was a large man in a dark suit, holding a black umbrella, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The second bodyguard was positioned further down the path. He stood near a large oak tree, his hands clasped in front of him, watching everything. This was the landscape of Kyle Thorne's life now, a world defined by constant caution and layers of protection. 3 years ago, his life had been different. 3 years ago, he had believed in love, in family, in the possibility of leaving his dangerous world behind. 3 years ago, his wife had died in a fire, or so he believed. But Leo made the prison of this careful life worthwhile. The boy's effortless laughter and his endless questions about the world made Kyle feel human again. That is when he heard it. A faint, broken sound. A quiet sob that somehow cut through the steady drumming of the rain. "She is over there, Papa." Leo pointed a small gloved finger down the walkway. "That lady is crying." Kyle's gaze followed his son's hand, and his heart seized in his chest. A woman was curled into a tight ball on the wet ground, maybe 30 feet away. Her clothes were torn and caked with mud. Her dark hair was a tangled mess, soaked and plastered to her skin. Her feet were bare, exposed to the cold, hard pavement. And then he saw her face. It was a face he knew better than his own. "That is not possible." The words caught in his throat. His first bodyguard moved closer. "Boss, is everything all right?" Kyle could not speak. He could not even seem to draw a breath. Serafina. Sarah. The woman he had loved with everything he had. The woman who had died 3 years ago. The woman whose funeral he had stood through, next to a coffin that he now realized was empty. She was supposed to be gone forever. But then she slowly lifted her head. Across the rainy distance, her eyes met his. And in her gaze, Kyle saw it. He saw pure, undeniable recognition. It was a look filled with years of pain, with profound shock, with a fragile, desperate hope that pierced him to his very soul. Before he could react, Leo broke free and started running. "No, Leo, stop!" But his son was already there, reaching for the broken woman with his small, open arms. "Papa, she is crying." Leo's voice was thick with concern. "You have to help her." Kyle forced his legs to move. His bodyguards fell into step beside him. Their faces were tense and alert, ready for any threat. But they were also watching him, watching their leader come completely undone. "Son, I need you to step back from her." Kyle's voice was trembling uncontrollably. "But Papa, she needs our help." "Leo, please." Kyle reached for his son, his touch as gentle as he could make it. His entire world had narrowed to the woman on the ground, to the impossible, terrifying question of whether she could possibly be real. Now here is where this story takes a turn that will change everything. I want you to pay close attention to what happens next, because the lesson here is one that could change your life. Power is supposed to protect what is yours. Kyle Thorne had power. He had money. He had influence. He had an army of loyal men who would follow him anywhere. But for 3 years, all of that power had done nothing. It had failed the one person who mattered most. That failure was a ghost that lived in his house. Now that ghost was lying on the cold, wet ground in front of him. And what you are about to hear is what happens when a powerful man finally learns the truth about who his real enemies are. Kyle dropped to his knees on the cold, wet pavement beside her. He was close enough now to see the small, healing cuts that marked her face. Close enough to see the uncontrollable tremor in her hands. Close enough to see that the eyes staring back at him, wide with terror and ageless pain, belonged to Serafina. This was not a ghost. This was not a trick of the mind. It was her. "Get her on her feet." Kyle's voice was raw but firm. "We need to get her somewhere warm, right now." The first bodyguard moved with practiced gentleness. He lifted her from the ground. She did not resist in any way. She simply leaned against him, as if all the strength she once possessed had been drained away years ago. "Where are we taking her, boss?" "The safe house on 5th Street. The one with the fully equipped medical room?" Kyle scooped Leo into his arms, holding him tight. "Make the call. I want the medic on site and waiting for us when we arrive." Leo squirmed in his father's embrace, trying to get a better view of the mysterious woman. "Papa, where are we taking the lady?" "We are taking her to a safe place, buddy." "Is she sick?" Yes, she is. Kyle's throat tightened. But we have doctors. They are going to help her get better. Will you stay with her? Leo's innocent question landed like a physical blow. She looks really, really scared. A painful lump formed in Kyle's throat. We will see, buddy. We will see. The ride to the safe house was almost completely silent. Sarah sat in the back of the SUV, her gaze fixed on the passing city lights. She stared out the window as if looking at a world she had only been able to dream about for years. Kyle watched her from the corner of his eye. He noticed how she flinched at the sound of a distant siren. He noticed the way her hands gripped the leather seat as if she expected to be torn away at any moment. Leo had fallen asleep between them, exhausted by the emotional storm of the day. When he finally woke up, his eyes immediately found Sarah's, as if he needed to confirm that she was still there. And then, without a word from anyone, Leo slowly reached out his small hand. Do not be scared. His voice was a soft, comforting whisper. Papa is here. He is going to help you now. A choked sob escaped Sarah's lips. Her own hand, shaking slightly, moved to meet Leo's. Their fingers connected. She gently took his small hand and pressed it to her cheek, holding it there like it was the most precious thing she had ever touched. Thank you. Her voice cracked on the word. Kyle felt a profound warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he was certain had died inside him 3 years ago. His own hand came to rest on Leo's shoulder, just inches from where Sarah's hand was. They were not touching, but for the first time in forever, they were close. The safe house appeared through the rain. It was a discreet, modern building that promised security and peace. When the vehicle stopped, Sarah exited slowly. Her hand was still holding onto Leo's. They stood together on the quiet sidewalk, a broken but hopeful picture. Kyle moved to stand beside them. Tomorrow. His voice was steady and full of conviction. I will bring Leo back to see you in the morning. I give you my word. Tomorrow. Sarah repeated the word like it was sacred, like it was a gift she never expected to receive again. Leo looked up at his father, then over at his mother. A small, tired smile touched his lips. Kyle's hand settled on his son's shoulder, right beside Sarah's. Their fingers were so close now, almost brushing. She is not going anywhere. Kyle's voice was a low, firm promise. And neither are we. Sarah finally smiled through her tears. For the first time, it was a real smile, reaching her eyes. Kyle gave a sharp nod to his bodyguard, who gently escorted Sarah toward the entrance. She looked back over her shoulder just once. Her eyes locked with Kyle's, a silent message passing between them. Then she disappeared behind the reinforced door. Papa. Leo let out a deep yawn. Are we going to be okay now? Kyle lifted his son into his arms, holding him against his chest with a fierce, protective grip. Yes, buddy, he whispered into his son's hair. We are going to be just fine. The safe house was an anonymous fortress, a completely renovated building hidden away in a quiet part of the city, meticulously clean, heavily secured, stocked with enough supplies to wait out a war. Kyle's head of security met them at the reinforced steel door. The building is secure, boss. The medic is already upstairs waiting. Good. Kyle's voice was clipped. I want 2 guards at every entrance. Nobody gets in or out unless I personally give the word. Understood. The medical room was on the 3rd floor. It was a bright, clean space equipped with everything you would find in a private doctor's office. Sarah was already inside, lying on the examination bed, while the medic checked her vital signs. Her eyes looked significantly clearer than they had in the park. Kyle gently set Leo down near the doorway. I need you to stay right here for a minute. Okay. But I really want to see her. Just give me 1 minute. Then I promise you can come over. Kyle walked slowly toward the bed. The medic glanced up from his work. She is cold and suffering from severe dehydration. She has some significant bruises and cuts, but nothing life-threatening. She needs rest, warmth, and proper food. With care, she will make a full recovery. Can she talk? Yes. She is doing much better now that she is warm. Kyle nodded and waited until they were alone. He looked directly at Sarah's pale face. She met his gaze with a look of nervous, fragile hope. Serafina. His voice was perfectly steady. Do you know who I am? Her eyes remained fixed on his. Kyle? Her voice was hoarse but unmistakably clear. Hearing his name spoken by her felt like a physical blow, but in a good way, like rediscovering a beautiful song you thought you had lost forever. Boss. The bodyguard looked up from his laptop. Facial recognition confirms her identity 100%. Serafina Vasco, officially listed as missing for 3 years. It is definitely her. Run a complete background check. I need to know everything that has happened since she disappeared. On it. Papa. Leo's small voice cut through the tension. The little boy had quietly moved closer to the bed. He was reaching out for Sarah's hand. Papa, can I hold her hand now? Kyle looked at his son, then at Sarah. Her expression was filled with such gentle, heartbreaking hope. Yes, buddy. You can hold her hand. A brilliant smile spread across Leo's face. He carefully took Sarah's thin hand between both of his little ones. Hi, I am Leo. What is your name? Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but she was smiling through them. I am Sarah. It is so very nice to meet you, Leo. You are really pretty, even with that sad face. She let out a soft, broken laugh. Thank you, sweetheart. Kyle watched the two of them together, and he saw it instantly. They had the exact same eyes, the same smile. The way Leo tilted his head was exactly the way Sarah used to. Boss. The bodyguard cleared his throat. Initial search shows nothing suspicious. No criminal history. No warrants. She is completely clean. Keep digging anyway. Sarah looked at Kyle. I know you must have so many questions. I will tell you everything. Just please do not send me away yet. I am not sending you anywhere. Kyle's voice was resolute. But I do need answers. Starting with where you have been for the last 3 years. Sarah drew a shaky breath. They took me that night at the coffee shop. I never even made it through the front door. Someone grabbed me from behind. When I woke up, I was locked in a dark basement. Kyle's jaw clenched. Who? It was your second in command. The words hit Kyle like a sledgehammer. James. He told me he wanted your entire organization for himself. He said he needed you to be broken so your own people would turn on you. Sarah's voice grew stronger. He faked all of it, Kyle. The video that showed me meeting with your rival. The evidence. It was all fabricated to frame me. She paused. The explosion was his way of making sure I disappeared. He wanted everyone to believe I was dead so you would stop searching. Her eyes pleaded with him. But he kept me alive. He told me I was his insurance policy. Kyle's fists tightened until his knuckles turned white. 3 years. For 3 years she was gone. And he had spent every single day believing she was the one who betrayed him. So what changed? Why are you out now? He died 6 months ago. A sudden heart attack. But his partner immediately took over. A man named Viktor Kozlov. She glanced down at her bare feet. He is worse, Kyle. So much worse. Her voice began to shake. Kozlov wanted to break me completely. For sport. He told me every single day that you had moved on. That you had another woman. Sarah's voice cracked. And he told me that my baby was dead. Kyle felt his blood turn to ice. What did you just say? The tears Sarah had been holding back finally fell. They told me our baby did not survive the birth. For 3 years, I believed I had lost my child before I ever got to hold him. She looked at Leo with fresh tears streaming down her face. And then I escaped. And I saw you in the park with him. I saw his face. I saw my own eyes looking back at me. Her whole body trembled. And I knew they had lied about everything. Leo immediately climbed onto the bed and wrapped his small arms around Sarah. Do not cry. I am right here. See? I am not dead. I am right here with you. Kyle had to turn away. His hands were shaking with fury. They had not just stolen Sarah from him for 3 years. They had tortured her with the cruelest lie imaginable. They had made a mother believe her own child was dead. I have to see proof. Kyle's voice was barely controlled. Let me see your left shoulder. Sarah's hand moved shakily to her shoulder. She lowered the fabric of the hospital gown. Kyle remembered the scar instantly. A thin, pale line from a bullet graze long ago. A newer, uglier burn mark was next to it. But the old scar was still there. He tried to burn it off me. Sarah's voice was filled with shame. So I could never be identified if I escaped. He just did not go deep enough. Kyle stared at the truth branded on her skin. But there was more. Beneath the burn mark, he could see other scars. Thin lines, cigarette burns, 3 years of systematic cruelty. I believe you. His voice was thick with emotion. Relief washed over Sarah's face. Her expression crumpled completely. Thank you. Oh, thank you. But Sarah, my world is complicated now. It is not safe for you or Leo. Kyle dragged a hand through his hair. You will stay here, where you can be protected. You will have the best security. Everything you need. Leo and I will visit you every single day. Every day? Her voice was filled with fragile hope. Starting tomorrow morning? Kyle glanced at Leo. Is that right, buddy? Leo beamed. Right. We are having breakfast together. That evening, Kyle sat alone in his study. His new security chief had assembled an extensive file on Viktor Kozlov. With every page he turned, another piece of the puzzle slid into place. Kozlov had been colluding with Kyle's former right-hand man for at least 6 months before the bombing. Financial records, secret meetings, a trail of buried secrets. But what worried Kyle most was the current intelligence. In the last week, Kozlov had been operating with new, audacious confidence, moving as if he sensed a shift in power. His phone buzzed with an encrypted call. Boss, we have a problem. The security chief's voice was tight with urgency. Kozlov gave a statement to the press. He is making allegations that you have been disrupting his business. He has paperwork to back it up. Kyle's hand clenched around the phone. What kind of heat? The kind that gets federal attention. And boss, he alluded to a woman. He claimed you are illegally detaining someone with inside knowledge of your organization. The words hung in the air. He knows she is alive. How? We are still determining that. But if he has this information, he will use it as leverage. After the call, Kyle remained at the window. Kozlov's knowledge changed everything. Sarah was no longer just a survivor to protect. She was a vulnerability his enemies could exploit, and that vulnerability extended to Leo. The cold logic offered one solution. Send Sarah away. Create a new identity for her. Relocate her somewhere distant and untraceable. It was the smart move, but the idea of telling her felt like a betrayal, like breaking a promise before he even made it. The following morning, Kyle was silent during the entire drive to the safe house. Leo picked up on it immediately. Dad, are you sad? No, pal, just thinking. About Sarah? Yes, about Sarah. Is it good thinking or worried thinking? Kyle met his son's eyes in the mirror. Worried thinking. But I'm trying to fix it. When they arrived, Sarah was waiting with a smile. But it vanished when she saw Kyle's expression. What is wrong? Let us get Leo situated first. They settled Leo with breakfast and some toys. Then Kyle led Sarah to a quiet corner. I have to tell you something difficult. His voice was heavy. Kozlov knows you are alive. He made a public statement yesterday, hinting at it. Sarah's face went pale. How? We do not know yet, but it changes things. Kyle took a breath. The safest option would be to relocate you. A new identity, somewhere far from here. Sarah's eyes widened with fear. You want to send me away? I do not want to. But I have to consider Leo's safety. And what about our family? Her voice cracked. Kyle, we just found each other again. From across the room, Leo's voice interrupted them. Why does Sarah look so sad again? They both turned. Leo was watching them with worried eyes. Come here, buddy. Kyle knelt down as Leo ran over. I want to ask you something important. How would you feel if Sarah came to live with us? At our house? Leo's face transformed with pure joy. Really? She can live with us forever? That is what we are trying to figure out. Leo looked at Sarah, then back at Kyle. Families are supposed to be together. You told me that. Kyle felt something crack inside him. His 2-year-old son had just solved the problem that had been tormenting him for days. A family was not about creating a perfect life without danger. It was about choosing to face that danger together. You are absolutely right, buddy. Kyle hugged him close. That is exactly what makes a family. He turned to Sarah. I was wrong. Running is not the answer. We face this together. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Together? Together. Kyle took her hand. But first, I have to end this. Koslov has to be dealt with. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to protect our family. The investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of gathering intelligence, tracking movements, building a case. Kyle visited Sarah and Leo every single day. They ate breakfast together every morning. Leo would chatter endlessly about his toys, his dreams, his plans for when Sarah came home. Sarah listened to every word like it was poetry, and slowly, day by day, she began to heal. The dark circles under her eyes faded. The haunted look began to lift. She started to look like the woman Kyle remembered. One evening, Kyle arrived at the safe house alone. Leo was with a trusted caretaker. There were things he needed to discuss with Sarah, difficult subjects that had been left unspoken. She was sitting by the window when he arrived, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. She looked better every day, healthier, stronger, more like the vibrant woman he had fallen in love with. Where is Leo? At home. I wanted to talk privately. Kyle sat across from her. There are things we have not discussed yet. Things I need to know. Sarah nodded and waited. Tell me about the 3 years. Every location, every name. Anything that could help me find who else was involved. She took a breath. They moved me constantly. Damp basements, abandoned warehouses. I was never sure of my exact location. The guards changed constantly. I never learned their real names. What about your escape? After your second-in-command died, everything fell into chaos. The guards started fighting among themselves. Last week, during a heated argument, one of them forgot to lock a door. She met his eyes. I just ran. There was no plan. I just fled. And you came straight to the city? Because you were here. Leo was here. Even though I did not know Leo existed, I knew I had to find you. I had to make you understand the truth. Kyle leaned forward. Sarah, do you have any evidence? Anything tangible that proves what they did? She slowly shook her head. They were incredibly careful. I was never allowed a phone or computer. My world was just locked rooms and silent guards. She paused. But I do have one thing. A memory that only the two of us could know. Something impossible to fake. What is it? Her fingers drifted to her collarbone. Do you remember the night you asked me to marry you? The air vanished from Kyle's lungs. He had never shared that memory with anyone. We never had a wedding, Sarah continued softly. We never told anyone about our engagement. But you gave me a ring that night, a delicate silver band with 3 tiny stones. Her voice grew thick with emotion. You said they represented the past, the present, and the future. Our 3 chances at happiness. I remember. Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. You put it on my right hand, not my left, because I was working at the clinic and wanted to avoid questions. She slowly reached into her pocket. One of the guards found it. He was going to throw it away. I begged him to let me keep it. I told him it belonged to my grandmother. She uncurled her fingers. Resting in her palm, tarnished and worn but unmistakable, was the ring Kyle had given her 4 years ago. His hands were shaking as he reached for it. He had bought it from a small jewelry shop, spent half a month's salary, given it to her on a rooftop at midnight. She had cried as she said yes, then kissed him like she never wanted to stop. You kept it. His voice was filled with awe. It was the only piece of you I had left. Whenever they told me you had moved on, I would hold this ring and know they were lying, because the man who gave me this would never forget me. Kyle turned the ring over. On the inner surface, so faint it was barely visible, were their initials, KT and SV. He had asked the jeweler to engrave them as a surprise. No one else knows this ring exists. His voice was quiet. It was created only for us. Only for us. The last piece of doubt inside Kyle finally crumbled. She was telling the truth. She had been telling the truth all along, and he had wasted 3 years believing a carefully crafted lie while she suffered alone. I am so sorry. The words came out broken. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded more answers. Instead, I accepted the worst story and tried to move on. You had no way of knowing. The evidence was designed to look authentic. I should have trusted my heart. My gut was screaming that something was wrong. I just did not listen. Sarah enclosed his hands with hers. We cannot change what happened. We can only move forward. And I refuse to be weighed down by anger and what-ifs. I want to build something new. How can you forgive me? Because holding on to anger would only poison me. Because I see you fighting for us now. Because our son deserves 2 whole parents, not 2 people shattered by bitterness. She squeezed his hands. And because I still love you. I never stopped. Kyle pulled her into a powerful embrace. They stayed that way for a long time, simply breathing together, letting 3 years of pressure finally dissolve. When they separated, Kyle gently took the ring and slid it onto her right hand. I never stopped either. I tried to move on, but it was impossible. Sarah smiled through her tears. So what do we do now? Now we end this. I will take care of Kozlov. We will bring you home, and we will start our lives over. He looked into her eyes. The 3 of us. Together as a family. As a family. The takedown happened 2 weeks later. Kyle's team had gathered enough evidence to bury Kozlov forever. Financial crimes, human trafficking connections, the kidnapping of Sarah. Everything was documented. Everything was ready. They moved at 3 in the morning. The operation was surgical, precise, overwhelming. Kozlov's men were neutralized before they could mount any resistance. When they reached the main office, Kozlov was waiting, sitting behind his desk with a glass of cognac. Kyle Thorne. His voice was calm. I wondered when you would come. Kyle stopped in the center of the room. You took something from me. You kept her locked in darkness for 3 years. You told her that her child was dead. Kozlov shrugged. Business. Nothing personal. Kyle stepped closer. She is not business. She is my family. His voice dropped to a growl. And you are going to pay for every single day. Kozlov laughed. You think this ends with me? I have powerful friends. Kyle smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Your friends are already distancing themselves. Your accounts are frozen. Your associates are being arrested as we speak. He dropped a thick folder on the desk. Every crime, every victim, every transaction, ready for prosecutors. For the first time, fear flickered in Kozlov's eyes. You are going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Kyle's voice was final. And every day, you will remember that I put you there. Take him. Kozlov struggled. He screamed. He made threats. But it was useless. The man who had haunted Sarah's nightmares was finally powerless. Kyle watched him being dragged away. Then he walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. It was over. That afternoon, Kyle brought Sarah home. Real home. Leo was waiting at the front door, bouncing with excitement. Is Sarah staying? Is she really staying forever? Yes, buddy. Kyle scooped him into a hug. She is here to stay. Forever. Leo let out an ecstatic shout and reached for Sarah. She took her son and pulled him into a tight embrace, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling his small arms lock around her neck. Welcome home, Mama. It was the first time he had ever called her that. Sarah's tears flowed freely, but she was smiling. Thank you, my sweet boy. Thank you for never giving up on me. The weeks that followed were filled with healing. Sarah had nightmares, moments of panic, times when she would freeze at unexpected sounds, but they faced it together. And slowly, she found her way back. She started cooking breakfast every morning. She started reading to Leo every night. She started laughing again, really laughing. Viktor Kozlov was tried and convicted on a long list of charges. His empire crumbled. His assets were seized. His name became nothing more than a warning. But none of that mattered to the Thorne family. What mattered was the kitchen table where 3 people shared breakfast every morning. What mattered was the garden where Sarah planted jasmine while Leo helped with his plastic shovel. What mattered was the bedtime ritual where Kyle read stories and Sarah tucked in blankets and Leo fell asleep, knowing he was safe and loved. 6 months later, Kyle and Sarah stood in that garden. Leo was nearby, chasing butterflies. Kyle turned to Sarah. I have something for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a new ring. Simple, elegant. 3 stones. The first ring was about our past. This one is about our future. If you will still have me. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Kyle lowered himself to one knee. Serafina Vasco. Will you marry me? For real this time. With a proper ceremony. With Leo throwing flower petals everywhere. Sarah was laughing through her tears. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Leo saw the commotion and came running. What happened? Did I miss something? Kyle scooped him up. Your mother agreed to marry me, buddy. Leo's eyes went wide. Does that mean we are a real family now? Sarah knelt to his level. We have always been a real family, but now we are making it official. Can I be in the wedding? You will be the most important person there. Leo pumped his fist in the air. Best day ever. The 3 of them stood together in the garden, the sun warm on their faces, the jasmine blooming around them. And for the first time in 4 long years, everything felt complete. Peaceful. Exactly right. This story was carefully developed to bring real value into your life. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Sarah spent 3 years in darkness. She was made to believe she had lost everything. But she never let her hope die. She never stopped fighting, and in the end, her strength brought her home. If you are walking through a difficult time right now, remember this. Your story is not finished yet. The people who try to break you do not get to write your final chapter. Only you can do that. It is your hand holding the pen. And often, the very thing meant to destroy you becomes the source of strength you never knew you had. If this story touched your heart, you need to see what is coming next. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Trust me, you will not regret it. I believe in you, and I will see you there. But before we end, let me take you back through the most important moments of this journey. Because there are lessons here that I do not want you to miss. When Kyle found Sarah in that park, he had a choice. He could have walked away. He could have told himself it was impossible. He could have let fear and doubt convince him that his eyes were playing tricks. But he did not. He chose to believe. He chose to hope. He chose to take a chance on something that seemed completely impossible. And that choice changed everything. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you faced something that seemed impossible? How many times have you wanted to give up because the odds were stacked against you? How many times have you let fear convince you to walk away from something that could have changed your life? Kyle Thorne was a powerful man. He had money. He had influence. He had an army of loyal men. But none of that mattered when he found Sarah. What mattered was his willingness to believe, his willingness to hope, his willingness to fight for the people he loved, even when everything seemed lost. That is real power. Not the money in your bank account, not the title on your business card, not the number of people who follow your orders. Real power is the strength to keep going when everything inside you wants to give up. Real power is the courage to believe in something bigger than your fear. Real power is the love that refuses to die, no matter how dark things get. Sarah spent 3 years in captivity, 3 years of darkness, 3 years of lies, 3 years of being told that everyone she loved had forgotten her. But she never stopped hoping. She never stopped believing that somehow, someday, she would find her way back to her family. And that hope kept her alive. When Kozlov told her that her baby was dead, she could have given up completely. She could have let the grief destroy her. She could have stopped fighting. But she did not. Somewhere deep inside her, a small flame refused to go out. A voice that whispered, "Keep going. Do not give up. There is still a chance." And that voice was right. Because 3 years later, a little boy with her eyes and her smile tugged on her sleeve in a rainy park and said 4 words that changed everything. "Papa, that is my mama." Leo saw the truth that the adults had missed. He saw through the dirt and the tears and the years of suffering. He saw his mother, and he was not afraid to say it out loud. That is the power of innocence. That is the power of a child's pure, uncomplicated love. Leo did not care about evidence or logic or impossibilities. He looked at that broken woman and he saw the truth. And he was brave enough to speak it. Sometimes we make things too complicated. We overthink. We overanalyze. We talk ourselves out of believing in miracles. But children do not do that. Children see the world as it is, not as we have convinced ourselves it must be. And sometimes, that simple way of seeing is exactly what we need to find our way back to the truth. The ring was the final proof. That small silver band with 3 stones that Kyle had given Sarah on a rooftop at midnight. No one else in the world knew it existed. It was their secret, their promise, their hope for the future. And Sarah had kept it through 3 years of hell. She had held on to it when they told her Kyle had moved on. She had clutched it when they told her that her baby was dead. She had protected it like it was the most precious thing she owned. Because it was. It was the only tangible piece of their love that survived. The only proof that what they had was real. When Kyle saw that ring, the last wall around his heart crumbled. All the doubt, all the suspicion, all the careful defenses he had built. Gone. Because you cannot fake something like that. You cannot manufacture a memory that pure. You cannot replicate a love that deep. The ring was not just evidence. It was a testament to the power of holding on. It was proof that some things are strong enough to survive anything. Even 3 years of darkness, even the cruelest lies, even the loss of everything you thought you knew. Kyle and Sarah had to rebuild from scratch. 3 years is a long time. People change. Circumstances change. The world keeps moving even when your heart has stopped. Kyle had spent those years believing Sarah betrayed him. He had hardened his heart, built walls, convinced himself that love was weakness. Sarah had spent those years believing Kyle had moved on. She had been told, day after day, that he was happy without her, that he had a new woman, that he had forgotten all about her. Those lies had done their damage. Even after the truth came out, there were moments of doubt, moments when old wounds resurfaced, moments when the pain of those lost years threatened to overwhelm them. But they chose to fight for each other. They chose to believe that their love was stronger than the lies. They chose to build something new instead of dwelling on what had been destroyed. And that choice made all the difference. Rebuilding is hard. Whether it is a relationship, a career, a dream, or simply your own sense of self. Putting the pieces back together is never easy. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes a willingness to be vulnerable, even when you are scared. It takes the courage to try again, even when you have failed before. But it is possible. If Kyle and Sarah could find their way back after 3 years of hell, there is hope for all of us. No matter how broken things seem, no matter how lost you feel, no matter how impossible the future looks, there is always a chance. There is always hope. There is always a way forward. You just have to be willing to take the first step. The healing did not happen overnight. Sarah had nightmares almost every night at first. She would wake up screaming, convinced she was back in that basement. Kyle learned to hold her through them, to whisper reassurances until her breathing slowed. There were moments of panic, times when she would freeze at unexpected sounds. The sound of a door closing, the beep of a security system, footsteps in the hallway. Each one could send her spiraling back to those dark days. But Kyle was patient. He never pushed, never demanded that she get better faster. He just held her, listened to her, let her heal at her own pace. And slowly, day by day, the nightmares became less frequent. The panic attacks grew shorter. The haunted look in her eyes began to fade. She started cooking breakfast again. Simple things at first. Pancakes for Leo, coffee for Kyle. But each meal was a victory. Each normal moment was a step away from the darkness and toward the light. She started reading to Leo every night, giving him the bedtime stories she had dreamed about during all those years in captivity. She would make up voices for the characters, add sound effects, turn simple stories into grand adventures. Leo would giggle and clap and beg for just one more chapter, and Sarah would smile, really smile. Not the fragile, uncertain smiles of those first days, but real, genuine joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. She started laughing again, at Leo's silly jokes, at Kyle's terrible puns, at the simple absurdity of life. Each laugh was a miracle. Each moment of happiness was a rebellion against everything they had tried to do to her. They wanted to break her. They failed. They wanted to destroy her hope. They could not. They wanted to erase the woman she had been. But she was still there, stronger than ever. The wedding was small, just close friends and family gathered in the garden. Leo walked down the aisle with the rings on a velvet pillow. His face was serious with the importance of his job. Sarah wore a simple white dress that reminded Kyle of the night they first met. And when they said their vows, there was not a dry eye in the garden. "I thought I lost you," Kyle said, his voice rough with emotion. "For 3 years, I lived in darkness. I went through the motions, but I was not really alive. And then Leo found you in that park, and everything changed." He took her hands in his. "I promise to never stop fighting for you. I promise to never stop believing in us. I promise to spend every day making sure you know how much you are loved." Sarah's tears fell freely as she spoke. "They tried to break me," she said. "They told me lies. They tried to make me forget who I was. But they failed. Because even in the darkest moments, I held on to you. I held on to the memory of your smile. I held on to the dream of coming home." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to never give up on us. I promise to fight for our family, no matter what. I promise to spend the rest of my life being grateful for this second chance." Leo, standing between them, looked up. "Are you two done being mushy? I really want cake." The garden erupted in laughter. And in that moment, surrounded by love and joy and the sweet scent of jasmine, the Thorne family was finally complete. 1 year later, they stood in that same garden. But this time, there was someone new. Sarah held a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft pink blanket, a baby girl with her father's eyes and her mother's smile. "What are we going to name her?" Leo asked, peering at his new sister. Kyle and Sarah looked at each other. "Hope," Sarah said softly. We are naming her Hope. Because that is what brought us back together, Kyle added. And that is what we want her to carry with her every day of her life. Leo nodded seriously. I like it. Hope. I am going to teach her everything I know. Sarah laughed. I am sure you will, sweetheart. They stood together in the garden, the four of them now. 2 parents, 2 children, 1 family. The jasmine bloomed around them. The sun was warm on their faces. And for the first time in 5 years, everything was exactly as it should be. This is where our story ends. But for the Thorne family, it was really just the beginning. A beginning built on hope. A beginning built on love. A beginning built on the belief that no matter how dark things get, there is always a way back to the light. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Thank you for believing in the power of hope. Thank you for staying until the very end. Now go out and write your own story. Hold on to the people you love. Fight for the things that matter. And never, ever give up. Your happy ending is out there waiting for you. All you have to do is keep going until you find it. I believe in you. And I will see you in the next story. Click on that video now. Trust me, you will not regret it. Let me share a few more details about those crucial weeks of healing. The first morning at the safe house, Kyle arrived with Leo at exactly 7 o'clock. They found Sarah sitting up in bed. Her hair was brushed. Her face had more color than the day before, but her eyes still held the shadows of 3 years of darkness. We brought breakfast. Leo announced this like he was declaring victory in a great war. He climbed onto the bed carefully, balancing a container of pancakes. I picked the ones with chocolate chips. Those are the best. Sarah looked at the food, then at Leo, then at Kyle, and something shifted in her expression. For a moment, the shadows retreated. Thank you, sweetheart. This looks wonderful. She ate slowly at first. Her stomach had shrunk during the years of captivity. Large meals made her sick. But bite by bite, she finished half the pancakes. Leo watched her with careful attention. You need to eat more so you can get strong. His voice was very serious. That is what Papa always tells me when I do not want to finish my vegetables. Sarah smiled. Your Papa is a very smart man. Kyle felt something warm spread through his chest at those words. Such a simple thing, but it meant everything. After breakfast, Leo insisted on showing Sarah his entire collection of toy dinosaurs. He had brought them in a backpack, carefully organized by size and species. This one is a T-Rex. He is the king of all the dinosaurs. Leo held up each one for inspection. And this one is a Triceratops. He has 3 horns. He went through every single dinosaur, explaining their names, their diets, their special abilities. Sarah listened to every word. She asked questions. She made impressed sounds at the appropriate moments. She let Leo arrange the dinosaurs in what he called their battle formation. And watching them together, Kyle saw something he had not seen in 3 years. He saw joy. Real, genuine, uncomplicated joy. It was in the way Sarah's eyes crinkled when she smiled. It was in the way her laugh rang out when Leo made his silly jokes. It was in the way she reached out to touch his hair, his cheek, his small hands, as if she still could not believe he was real. 3 years of darkness, 3 years of believing her child was dead. And now here he was, showing her his toy dinosaurs and explaining why the velociraptor was actually his favorite. Kyle had to step out of the room for a moment. He stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, taking deep breaths. He was not a man who cried. He had not cried at Sarah's funeral, not during the 3 years of grief that followed. But standing in that hallway, listening to his son's happy chatter and his wife's delighted responses, Kyle felt tears burning in his eyes. Tears of relief, tears of gratitude, tears for all the moments they had lost and all the moments they were finally getting back. Boss? Marcus appeared at the end of the hallway. Everything okay? Kyle cleared his throat. Yeah, everything is fine. He paused. Actually, everything is better than fine. The second day, Sarah asked about the investigation. Kyle had been careful not to discuss Kozlov in front of Leo, but during the boys' nap, Sarah brought it up herself. I need to know what is happening. Her voice was steady, but Kyle could see the tension in her shoulders. I need to know that he is going to pay for what he did. Kyle sat across from her. We are building a case. Every crime, every victim, every transaction. We are making sure there is no way he walks away from this. Sarah nodded. And your second in command? James? Dead. 6 months ago. Heart attack. Kyle's jaw tightened. But that does not mean he escapes justice. We are documenting everything he did too. His name will be connected to every crime. His legacy will be nothing but shame. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. I do not want to be afraid anymore. She looked up at him. For 3 years I lived in fear. Every day. Every hour. And I am done with that. She took a breath. I want to testify. Against Kozlov. Against everyone involved. I want to look them in the eyes and tell the world what they did. Kyle studied her face. Are you sure? It would mean reliving everything. Publicly. I am sure. Her voice did not waver. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to make me disappear. But I am still here, and I want them to know that they failed. Kyle reached out and took her hand. Then that is what we will do. The investigation moved quickly after that. Kyle's team worked around the clock, tracking leads, documenting connections. Sarah provided crucial testimony, names she had overheard, locations she could describe, details only someone inside the operation could know. Her memory was remarkable. Even after 3 years of trauma, she remembered specific conversations, specific dates, specific faces. Every piece of information brought them closer to Kozlov. And every day, Sarah grew stronger. Physically, the transformation was visible. The hollows in her cheeks filled out. The dark circles under her eyes faded. The tremor in her hands steadied. But the emotional healing was even more remarkable. She started sleeping through the night. Most nights, at least. She started laughing more easily. She started talking about the future. Something she had not been able to do in those first days. One evening, about a week after coming to the safe house, Sarah asked Kyle to stay after Leo fell asleep. They sat together on the small couch in her room. Can I tell you something? Sarah's voice was soft. Of course. When I was in that basement, I used to imagine this. She gestured at the room. Not this specifically, but being somewhere safe, being warm, having enough food, and you. I used to imagine you coming to find me. Kyle felt his throat tighten. I never stopped looking. His voice was rough. Even when I believed the worst, there was a part of me that kept searching, that could not accept you were really gone. Sarah nodded slowly. I know. I can see it now. The way you have been these past few days. You are not just relieved. You are grieving. Kyle was quiet for a moment. I am grieving the 3 years we lost. I am grieving the man I became when I thought you betrayed me. I am grieving all the things I should have done differently. Sarah touched his hand. We cannot change the past, but we can choose what comes next. Kyle looked at her. What do you want to come next? I want to be a family, a real family. I want to watch our son grow up. I want to be there for his first day of school, his first heartbreak, his first everything. She paused. And I want to do it with you. If you still want that too. Kyle turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers. I never stopped wanting that, not for a single day. They sat together in the quiet room, hands intertwined. Sometimes there are no words for the things that matter most. Sometimes you just have to sit in the silence and let the truth sink in. They were alive, they were together, and they had a chance to build something beautiful from the ashes. The takedown was about more than revenge. It was about justice. It was about making sure no other woman would go through what Sarah endured. It was about sending a message. Kyle's team documented everything. They found records of other victims. Women trafficked through Koslov's network, women abused, women silenced. With each discovery, Kyle's resolve hardened. This was not just about his family. This was about all the families destroyed, all the lives shattered, all the voices silenced. When his team finally moved on Koslov's compound, they were not just taking down one man, they were dismantling an entire network of cruelty. The federal authorities who arrived found evidence of crimes spanning multiple countries: human trafficking, money laundering, corruption, murder. Koslov would spend the rest of his life in prison, and everyone who helped him would face justice too. But for Kyle, the most important moment came 3 months later. He was in the courtroom when Sarah took the stand. She walked to the witness box with her head held high. She looked directly at Koslov as she told her story. Every detail, every horror, every lie. Her voice did not waver. When she finished, Kyle saw something change in her. The last shadows lifted from her eyes. She had faced her nightmare. And she had won. After the verdict was announced, Kyle found Sarah outside the courthouse. She was looking up at the sky, tears streaming down her face. "It is really over." Her voice was barely a whisper. Kyle came to stand beside her. "How do you feel?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Free," she finally said. "For the first time in 3 years, I feel completely free." Kyle pulled her into his arms. They stood there on the courthouse steps, holding each other. It was over. They could finally move forward. They could finally live. The first year of their new life was a journey of rediscovery. Sarah had to learn how to be free again. After 3 years of captivity, even simple things felt strange. The ability to walk outside whenever she wanted. The ability to eat whatever she chose. The ability to sleep in a real bed with clean sheets. The ability to see the sky. She would stand in the garden sometimes, just looking up at the clouds, breathing in the fresh air, reminding herself that this was real, that she was really free. Kyle watched her during those moments. He never interrupted. He understood that she needed time, time to heal, time to trust, time to believe that the nightmare was truly over. Leo helped more than anyone. Children do not dwell on the past. They live in the present with a purity that adults have forgotten. Every morning, Leo would bounce into Sarah's room. "Mama, the sun is up. Time to start the day." And Sarah would smile and pull him into a hug and marvel at the miracle of having him there. Her son, alive and healthy and happy, the child she had believed was dead for 3 long years. Kyle made changes to their life. He stepped back from the more dangerous aspects of his business. He delegated to people he trusted. He put his family first in a way he never had before. Because he understood now that all the money and power in the world meant nothing if you lost the people you loved. He had been given a second chance. He was not going to waste it. They moved to a new house, a modest, comfortable place on a quiet street. No armed guards at every entrance. No bulletproof windows. No panic rooms. Just a normal home where a normal family could live a normal life. Sarah planted jasmine in the garden. Every time she smelled those flowers, she remembered. She remembered the night Kyle proposed. She remembered the years they had lost. She remembered the miracle that brought them back together. Leo started preschool. On his first day, both parents walked him to the door. Sarah cried. Kyle pretended not to cry. Leo rolled his eyes at both of them. "It is just school. I will see you this afternoon." But he hugged them both extra tight before he went inside. That afternoon, when they picked him up, Leo had a drawing to show them. 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one with dark hair, a medium one with long hair, a small one in the middle. "That is us," Leo explained. "That is our family." Sarah framed that drawing and hung it in the kitchen. It was the most beautiful piece of art she had ever seen. Months passed, the seasons changed, and somewhere along the way, the healing became complete. The nightmares stopped, the panic attacks faded, the shadows lifted and never returned. Sarah laughed easily now. She slept peacefully. She looked forward to each new day. And Kyle discovered something he had forgotten was possible. He discovered how to be happy. Not temporary happiness, real happiness. The kind that comes from sitting at the breakfast table with your family, listening to your son talk about his dreams, watching your wife smile at you across the table. The kind that comes from quiet evenings in the garden, watching the sunset with the woman you love. The kind that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you have everything that truly matters. That was the life Kyle Thorne finally built. Not a fortress of power and protection. A home, a family, a future. When baby Hope was born, she completed the picture. Sarah held her daughter and wept. Tears of joy, tears of gratitude, tears for all the miracles that had brought them to this moment. Kyle stood beside her, one hand on Sarah's shoulder, the other holding Leo up so he could see his new sister. She is really small, Leo observed. She will get bigger, Kyle assured him. Can I teach her about dinosaurs? You can teach her everything. Leo nodded seriously. That is a lot of responsibility, but I am ready. Sarah laughed through her tears. And in that hospital room, surrounded by the three people she loved most, she knew she was the luckiest woman alive. Not because of the money, not because of the security, because of the love, because of the family, because of the second chance she had been given. 5 years later, a reporter asked Sarah about her experience. It was the anniversary of Koslov's conviction. Sarah agreed to the interview. She sat in their garden, surrounded by jasmine, and answered with calm honesty. The reporter asked what advice she would give to others who had survived trauma. Sarah thought about it. Keep hoping, she said, even when everything seems hopeless, even when the darkness feels like it will never end. Keep a small flame burning inside you, because you never know when that flame is going to light the way home. She paused. And when you finally find your way back to the light, do not waste a single moment. Tell the people you love that you love them. Forgive the things that need forgiving. Let go of anger and bitterness and regret. Her eyes were bright with tears, but her smile was radiant. Life is too short to spend it holding on to darkness. Choose the light. Every single day, choose the light. The interview aired on national television. Thousands of people reached out. Survivors of trauma, people facing impossible situations, anyone who had ever felt lost and alone. Sarah's story gave them hope. Her strength gave them courage. Her words reminded them that even the darkest night eventually ends. And that morning, when it comes, is all the more beautiful for the darkness that came before. This is where our story truly ends. But for the Thorne family, it was always just the beginning. A beginning built on hope, a beginning built on love, a beginning built on the belief that no matter how dark things get, there is always a way back to the light. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Thank you for believing in the power of hope. Thank you for staying until the very end. Now go out and write your own story. Hold on to the people you love, fight for the things that matter, and never, ever give up. Your happy ending is out there waiting for you. All you have to do is keep going until you find it. I believe in you, and I will see you in the next story. Click on that video now. Trust me, you will not regret it. Let me leave you with one final thought. The story of Kyle and Sarah is extraordinary, but the lessons it holds are universal. Every single one of us will face moments when hope seems impossible, moments when the darkness feels like it will never end, moments when giving up seems like the only option. But here's what Sarah's story teaches us. Hope is a choice, even in the darkest basement, even when surrounded by lies, even when everything you love seems lost forever. You can choose to keep hoping. You can choose to keep fighting. You can choose to believe that there is still a chance. That choice is the most powerful thing you possess. More powerful than money, more powerful than influence, more powerful than any weapon ever created. Because hope is the flame that lights the way forward. Hope is the voice that whispers, keep going. Hope is the strength that carries you through when you have nothing left. Sarah held on to hope for 3 years. She held on to it when they told her Kyle had moved on. She held on to it when they told her that her baby was dead. She held on to it when every logical part of her brain said that rescue was impossible. And that hope saved her. It kept her alive long enough to escape. It kept her moving toward the city where her family was waiting. It kept her believing, even when she was huddled on the cold ground of that rainy park. And then Leo saw her, a 2-year-old boy with pure, innocent eyes. He looked at that broken woman, and he saw his mother. He did not see the dirt or the scars, or the years of suffering. He saw love. He saw family. He saw hope. And in that moment, everything changed. The walls Kyle had built came crashing down. The lies that had separated them for 3 years were finally exposed, and a family that had been shattered was finally made whole again. That is the power of hope. That is the power of love. That is the power of never, ever giving up. So if you are facing your own darkness right now, if you are in your own basement, surrounded by your own lies, if you are wondering whether there is any point in keeping going, I want you to remember Sarah. I want you to remember her strength. I want you to remember that she survived. And I want you to know that you can survive too. Whatever you are going through right now, it is not the end of your story. It is just a chapter. A dark chapter, maybe. A painful chapter, certainly. But not the final chapter. That is still being written. And you are the one holding the pen. So write something beautiful. Write a story of hope. Write a story of survival. Write a story that proves to everyone who ever doubted you that you are stronger than they thought. Because you are. You are stronger than you know. You are braver than you believe. And you are loved more than you realize. The people who care about you are waiting. Just like Kyle was waiting for Sarah. Just like Leo was waiting to say those 4 words that changed everything. Papa, that is my mama. Your moment is coming. Your rescue is on the way. Your happy ending is out there. You just have to keep hoping long enough to find it. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for letting me share this story. Thank you for believing that stories like this matter. Because they do. Stories have power. They have the power to inspire, to heal, to transform. They remind us that we are not alone. They show us that others have faced darkness and found their way back to the light. They give us the courage to keep going when everything inside us wants to give up. I hope this story gave you some of that courage. I hope it reminded you that hope is always possible. I hope it showed you that even after 3 years of darkness, there can still be a happy ending. And I hope you carry that message with you, not just today, but every day. Because you deserve a happy ending too. You deserve love. You deserve hope. You deserve a family that stands with you through anything. And I believe you will find it. I truly do. Now, I have another story waiting for you. A story that will make you laugh and cry and believe in the power of love all over again. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Trust me, you do not want to miss this one. It is going to be incredible. I promise. I believe in you, and I will see you there. One more thing before you go. I want to tell you about the moment that changed everything for Sarah. It was not the moment Kyle found her in the park. It was not the moment she escaped from Kozlov's compound. It was not even the moment she first held the ring in her palm and knew that her love had survived. It was a moment that happened long before any of that. It was a moment in the darkness. 3 months into her captivity, Sarah had reached her lowest point. The guards had just told her that Kyle was engaged to another woman. They showed her photographs. Faked, of course, but she did not know that then. She saw Kyle smiling with another woman. She saw him laughing. She saw him looking happy. And something inside her shattered. She stopped eating. She stopped speaking. She stopped caring whether she lived or died. For 3 days, she lay in the corner of her cell, waiting for the end. And then, On the fourth day, something happened. A memory surfaced. It was a memory from years ago, before she even met Kyle. She was a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She had been playing in the backyard when she fell and scraped her knee. The pain was terrible. She was crying. She wanted to give up and just lie there on the ground, but her grandmother came out and knelt beside her. Her grandmother was a strong woman, a survivor of many hardships, and she said something that Sarah never forgot. "My darling girl, pain is just a message. It tells you that something needs to heal, but you get to decide how you respond to that message. You can lie here and let the pain win, or you can get up, clean the wound, and keep playing. The pain will fade, but your choice to keep going? That will make you stronger forever." 7-year-old Sarah wiped her tears. She got up, she cleaned her knee, and she went back to playing. In that dark cell, 30 years later, that memory saved her life. She realized that the pain she was feeling was just a message that something inside her was broken. But she could choose how to respond. She could lie in that corner and let the pain win, or she could get up, face the wound, and keep fighting. The pain would fade, but her choice to keep going would make her stronger forever. Sarah chose to keep going. She started eating again. She started planning. She started looking for any opportunity to escape. It took her 2.5 more years to find that opportunity, but she never gave up again, because she remembered her grandmother's words, and she remembered that she had a choice. That is the lesson I want to leave you with. You always have a choice. No matter how dark things get, no matter how much pain you are in, no matter how hopeless the situation seems, you can choose to give up, or you can choose to keep going. The darkness wants you to give up. It wants you to lie down and let it win. But you are stronger than the darkness. You have survived everything life has thrown at you so far. And you can survive this too. So get up, face the wound, keep playing. The pain will fade, but your strength will last forever. I believe in you. Kyle believed in Sarah, even when he thought she was gone. Sarah believed in herself, even in the darkest moments. Leo believed in his mother, even though he had never consciously met her. Belief is powerful. It can move mountains. It can break chains. It can bring people back from the dead. So believe. Believe in yourself. Believe in your future. Believe that your happy ending is possible. Because it is. I promise you, it is. Now go write that happy ending. And when you do, come back and tell me about it. I want to hear your story. I want to celebrate your victory. I want to know that this time we spent together made a difference, because it matters to me. You matter to me, and I truly, genuinely hope that your life gets better from this moment forward. Thank you for everything. I will see you in the next story. Click on that video now. The adventure continues, and it is going to be amazing. I believe in you.